We're a couple weeks into 2025, and I think this is going to be a very interesting year for games for a couple different reasons. Ever since we ended up having everything that happened back at the start of 2020, there was a period where a whole lot of games were getting delayed and pushed back, and after that, we entered a phase of catch-up. Tons of releases, back to back to back. 23 and 24 were just absolutely stuffed with titles, and while I think we might still see some big releases this year, it feels like we've now fully caught up on that momentum, and things are now going to slow back down a little bit. On top of the fact that something else we've seen over the past couple years is major layoffs across the entire industry. Now, of course, the year has just started, and so there's a whole lot of announcements and news that can still drop very soon to clear up what exactly is going to be coming out this year. There's always going to be those announcements that happen at the start of the year or during the summer that's going to fill out the whole year quite a bit more. But going into it, there are some things we know about, as well as some things that are heavily speculated to happen this year that I want to talk about. And Nintendo, I want to talk about first for probably pretty obvious reasons. When it comes to first-party big titles, there's only a handful that we know of right now, a couple that have actual locked-in release dates, and another couple that are going to be a little farther out. Very soon we'll be seeing the release of Donkey Kong Country Returns, again, on the Switch. We'll also be getting the remaster or remake, whatever term you want to use, for Xenoblade Chronicles X. And then somewhere out there this year, we're going to be seeing releases for Metroid Prime 4 Beyond and Pokemon ZA. Now, beyond these games, though, there is, of course, that one gigantic elephant in the room that Nintendo themselves have yet to fully officially comment on: their next system. There have been all kinds of leaks and rumors and mock-ups and physical prototypes and supposedly actual hardware that's made its way out somehow that everyone's been talking about and sharing details for, but Nintendo themselves are still tight-lipped. The only thing they've really said is that they'll be officially unveiling their next system sometime the first quarter of this year. A lot of people are hoping that means we're going to be seeing it this month in January, maybe sometime in the mid-10s, only a week away, but it could end up being something we don't actually learn about till February or March. We just don't know until Nintendo themselves actually say something. But knowing that we're going to be getting the reveal of a system that will very more than likely be releasing this year, of course that means we're also going to be seeing a lot of software announced tied into it. Either something to accompany it right away at launch, or during that opening launch window of 3 to 6 months. And there's already plenty of rumors and speculation of what these games could be. The last video I put up recently was actually going over a whole bunch of ones that I think are a possibility. The most popular ones that have been really talked about is getting a brand new 3D Mario, as well as Mario Kart 9. I don't necessarily see both of those happening immediately right out of the gate on launch day, but one of them I think is certainly a possibility alongside some other titles. But really, we just don't know for sure until Nintendo actually hard announces something. Real quick before moving on, I do want to shout out a new project I'm working on this year. I have just begun releasing a brand new podcast with my buddy Cameron Hawkins called Party Chat, a JRPG podcast, which, as the name might imply to you, is us talking about JRPGs, keeping up with all the latest releases and just going in depth on the genre that we both love so much. And in fact, we're only a couple episodes in, and the second one is directly relevant to this video, where we go over a bunch of upcoming releases this year in 2025, what we're hyped to play, and why we're excited about them. So if you want to check that out, video versions of the podcast are available here on YouTube. I'll have that link down below in the description, as well as the end of this video. And if you prefer audio only for your podcasts, it is available on all major podcasting platforms. I'll have a couple of those linked down below in the description as well. Moving on, next I want to talk about Xbox, because Xbox for a while now has been in this, what feels like a very transitionary stage. There's always been the talk of, oh, they've now acquired all these companies, and so now we're going to see all these big releases come out. And while some things have caught up, this year is actually looking like one where we're finally going to see the payoff for a bunch of acquisitions they've made in the past. There are numerous titles slated for 2025, though there's of course always the possibility that some of that could get delayed. The only one that actually does have a locked-in date right now is Avowed, coming out in early February, which was originally planned to be a 24 game that got pushed back. But beyond that, though, there are a number of other games that are supposed to come out in 25, including their next Fable title, Obsidian's next game after Avowed, which is Outer Worlds 2, and then a pair of games that I think are a little more safely locked in this year for sure are South of Midnight and Doom: The Dark Ages, particularly because at the end of this month, Xbox has announced a developer direct where they'll be featuring those two games alongside Expedition 33 and a mystery dev. Outside of first-party games, another interesting thing we might see happen for Xbox Xbox this year is some third-party devs who have been dodging Xbox platform releases for a little bit and have been staying a little more exclusive might be opening up to being more completely multi-platform. A big example being Square Enix. They have talked recently about not wanting their games to stay as exclusive as they've been the last few years, which could mean that this is the year we start to see things like Final Fantasy VII Remake, 7 Rebirth, and FF16 make their way to Xbox. The other thing about Xbox, though, is that one of the big messages they started pushing at the end of last year, and I think we're going to see them lean even harder into this year, is this is an Xbox. The idea of saying that, sure, there is the official first-party Xbox hardware, the Xbox Series X, the Xbox Series S, but ultimately, Xbox is anything where you can play your Xbox games, including in situations where it's something that's strictly stream play. For instance, at CES, we got the confirmation that in the past, Xbox has made streaming games available on Samsung TVs and now is going to be adding that functionality to LG televisions as well. And beyond that, something I think is going to become a very heavy stage for not necessarily just Xbox, but Microsoft in general moving ahead in this year is PC handhelds. This is an emerging space that has been really blowing up over the past couple years, really starting with the release of the Steam Deck as far as something that I think is more popularly available to a lot of consumers. And we're entering the space now there where there's almost this head-to-head battle that's going to start happening between Windows and Steam, because SteamOS is opening up to more handhelds, and they've already confirmed that some third-party hardware like Lenovo's next PC handheld is going to have SteamOS right out the gate. And so I think Xbox and Windows is starting to get that momentum push of like, hey, PC handhelds are blowing up. We need to start making our software more friendly for these things and make Windows the home for more of these handhelds. And that's really been the case for all of them outside of the Steam Deck the past year, but with OS opening up to more, there's going to be that reason to have a little more competition brought on. There's also been rumors of Xbox having their own first-party handheld option, whether that takes the form of a Windows PC handheld or something that is specifically Xbox branded with its own more unique OS. But that is something that has been very lightly teased over the last year. I don't know if that's necessarily something we're going to see in 25. I think it's more likely that we're going to see them focus a little bit more on the OS side of things and just Windows PC handhelds in general, with a specific Xbox branded hardware happening a little further down the line, maybe next year. Could end up being a surprise this holiday season, but at least based on comments we've seen lately, it doesn't seem like it's something immediately on the horizon. Another thing about the whole Xbox Play Anywhere thing is the idea that more and more of their games are going to be coming to platforms outside of just Xbox and PC. We already know that Indiana Jones is going to be making its way to PlayStation this year very soon, and there have been very strong rumors recently, first shared by Nate the Hate, talking about some of their other major IPs coming to PlayStation and even Nintendo Switch with things like Halo Master Chief Collection, which is certainly the thing that I think diehard Xbox fans are not gonna necessarily be very excited about, but I am curious to see how much this pivot of Xbox really focusing more on software, not getting rid of their own hardware, but ultimately the software is the actual end-of-day heavy focus, with these titles coming to more platforms and focusing on things like Game Pass and Xbox stuff just being available as many places as it can be. Now, the traditional big three console manufacturers, I want to talk about PlayStation last because they're the company that I actually think is the biggest mystery right now for what exactly the plan is this year. There was a very heavy push on hardware over the last couple of years. We got a bunch of stuff released back in 23 with PSVR 2. They did the revised mainline PS5 system. They released a whole bunch of extra accessories like new headsets, the PlayStation Edge controller, their accessibility controller. Last year, of course, we got the release of the PS5 Pro. And looking ahead to this year, there's a lot of open space right now. There are some games to look forward to, but that list is fairly short at the moment. The only big games that have really been talked about for a 25 release are Ghost of Yotei and Death Stranding 2, though there are also going to be those games that are not first-party PlayStation, which Death Stranding isn't either, but they have their temporary exclusivity. But you look at a few different third-party manufacturers that are having exclusivity on PlayStation, particularly Chinese devs releasing games like Lost Soul Aside and When Winds Meet. There are some games that PlayStation has talked about in the past that just doesn't have a locked-in year just yet. There were a couple different live service games that were talked about, like with Fair Games, and based on how the live service push has been going so far with releases like Concord, but also on the other end of things, Helldivers 2, it's not really clear if those plans are going to be impacted or changed in terms of release schedule. There is also the fact that we know Insomniac is working on more Marvel property stuff, so Wolverine is something that could potentially end up seeing a release this year, or additional Spider-Man content. And obviously at the Game Awards very recently, we got the reveal of the next game coming from Naughty Dog, but that doesn't have a time associated with just yet. So this year would be definitely a surprise if it happened that quickly, but very easily could be something that's more of a 26 or beyond release. That said, while we only have a handful of first-party titles confirmed coming to PlayStation itself this year, we do know that similar to Xbox opening up their games to more platforms, PlayStation is becoming much more comfortable with the idea of releasing their stuff on PC more regularly. We know they're getting Spider-Man 2 on PC very soon, and I'm sure that's not going to be the last title that opens up as more releases come out. So we're probably going to see some more stuff ported that way, but I would love to see the systems catalog built up a bit more for this year. Speaking of systems, hardware, again, there was a lot of hardware over the past couple years from PlayStation, and we don't really know where they're sitting right now, if they're going to be releasing anything else in the near future. They've pretty much caught up on most of their major lines with things like doing a system revision, headsets, controllers, all that good stuff. The one thing that is a light possibility and has been talked and teased about, but I don't think is going to be this year, a handheld. Similar to Xbox, there has been light rumor and talk of PlayStation wanting to make their own first-party handheld once again. The Portal, while it has its uses and is a great way to remote play the system, is not a true native handheld in the way that, say, the Nintendo Switch is, or all the PC handhelds that have been blowing up. Handheld gaming has been getting more and more popular, and it sounds as if both Xbox and PlayStation are interested in getting involved in that. For PlayStation, that takes making their own system from the ground up, because they can't go that OS route like Xbox is with Windows. Still, this is something that has only been very lightly teased and talked about, to the point where I don't think this would be the year for that to happen. I would love for it to be. That would be a great surprise and something I think would be very exciting for PlayStation as a brand this year, but the timing just feels a bit too soon, at least based on when they've been talking about it. So those are just some thoughts of what we can look ahead to for the rest of this year. I am planning a whole bunch more content. I want to start talking more about a lot of the Switch 2 stuff we've been seeing lately, because while I end up bashing my head against the wall when thinking about all of these rumors, leaks, and just the constant hype cycle while people speculate before Nintendo actually just says something themselves, there's enough stuff out there that we should probably just start talking about it. Hopefully they just end up making the announcement soon though, because I would love to focus on what we actually for sure know is happening. As always, if you enjoyed this video, hit the thumbs up button to let me know, subscribe if you haven't yet, and I will see you all later.